Don't put it close, just put it up against the...
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammadin wa ala ali Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammadin wa ashabi Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammadin wa barik wa sallim. Salatu wa salamun alayka ya Sayyidi ya Rasulullah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Sayyidi ya Habiballah. Right, so last thing where we left off was praying nafil sitting down. That it is entirely permissible, however, only half the reward. And the last thing in this section, Imam Sarabji says that the sunnahs of Fajr, they have been, there's an exception being made regarding sunnahs of Fajr from this rule. Why? Because these are the most emphasized of all sunnahs. So he says, فَالْإِحْتِيَاطُ أَنْ تُصَلِّيَ مِنْ. He says that caution would dictate that you pray standing always, the sunnahs of Fajr. إِذَا لَمْ يَكُنْ عُذْرٌ, when there is no legitimate reason, when if there's no medical reason or physical reason, injury, disability of any kind, then you should not pray the sunnahs of Fajr sitting down, because these are the most emphasized. And it does say that Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, according to him, if you start standing up and then sit down partway through, this is permissible. The two companions, his students, Imam Muhammad and Imam Abu Yusuf, their view is contrary to this. However, the fatwa is in accordance with Imam Abu Hanifa's view. And that concludes the section on sunnahs. What I said, I'll come back to in this lecture.
The Jummah, the additional two sunnahs after the before.
Yeah. I mentioned that, didn't I? That Jummah obviously is an alternative or substitute as well, but there's something else as well.
With the missing.
Yes. So in terms of sunnahs and sunnah muakkada, ghair muakkada, nafil, mustahab, basically this whole category of nafil, there's no qada. Qada is only for fard and wajib. If you miss them, then there's no qada, except for sunnahs of fajr. And so that is, if you're doing qada of fajr, if you slept through fajr and you're doing qada of fajr before zawal time begins, before midday or before zawal, then pray the two sunnahs and the fard. If you make it up after zawal, in other words, if you make it up, if you can't pray during zawal, if you make it up in zohar time or beyond that, then just the fard. Then the sunnahs of zohar are left as well. And so other than that, no sunnah or nafil is prayed as qada. There is no qada for sunnah or nafil.
Is that just based on the considerations, or just that it's not condoned?
Yeah, because the Prophet ﷺ, remember the Prophet ﷺ himself did pray qada, didn't he? We've done the chapter on qada. So there's numerous examples of where the Prophet ﷺ prayed certain prayers as qada, and only prayed the Fard. That was the Fard al-Wajib. We have action of the Prophet that sets the
If you say you commit late to Jumu'ah prayer and you miss the four sunnah at the start, would you make them up straight?
Yes. In terms of with the sunnahs muqaddar of Zuhr or Jummah as well, for example, as long as it's within their own time,
Within the time
then it's not really qada in that sense. There are emphatic sunnahs, so they should be made up after as well. And again, there's a difference of opinion. Like for example, if somebody missed the sunnahs of Zuhr, the four sunnahs at the beginning, four sunnah muqaddar. If Jamaat has started, the rule is, or if Iqamah is being called, leave the sunnahs of Zuhr and head for Jamaat. Then read them afterwards. But then where do you read them? So one opinion is that because they are being delayed from their position, read them as soon as possible. So read them straight after the Fard and then read your two sunnah and two nafil. The other opinion is that because they have already been misplaced, don't misplace anything else. So, keep the rest of the sequence and then pray them at the end. But yes, pray them after the Fard. Because, and again, like I said, because they're within their own time, this is not really qada, you're just reading them out of sequence.
What's the preferred position out of the two?
If I remember correctly, the position of praying them immediately after the Fard, this is the position held by Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, and that is the preferred opinion. But I reserve the right to correct myself. I'm not 100% certain. Right, okay, so moving on next, we're still in this same section we're still in the same chapter of Nawafil. It's now going to, Imam Sawardi rahimahullah ta'ala is now going to go through the other different types of nafil. So aside, what we've covered so far is those which are attached to the daily prayers. Now we're going to look at standalone nawafil, if you like. So things like Salatul Taraweeh and Salatul Layl, Tahajjud, and other nawafil. So standalone nawafil, those which are not connected with any of the 5 daily prayers, optional prayers. And so, the first chapter, or the first section now that we look at is Salatul Layl. This is Tahajjud prayer. And there is an interesting discussion here regarding those who say Taraweeh is 8 units, and obviously the general opinion that it's 20 units. Because the ahadith that they use are taken from chapters of Salatul Layl. So even the evidence that they use is actually misreferenced, and those ahadith are actually in relation to Salatul Layl, which is Tahajjud, not Taraweeh. So, but obviously these two chapters are adjacent. We will discuss that when it becomes more clear, basically what both of these things are. I'll come back to that discussion. So Salatul Layl rak'atan bi taslimatin. Salatul Layl, Tahajjud, Imam Sawardi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that this is 2 units of prayer with 1 salam. So a set of 2 units of prayer. Based on a narration from Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala, حين بات عند خالته ميمونة أم المؤمنين رضي الله تعالى عنها. When he spent the night at his auntie, his khala, Sayyida Maimuna radiyallahu anha's home, who was the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in that narration it mentions that ثم ذهبت فقمت إلى جنبي. It's a long narration. There's a bit before this as well, that I spent the night at my auntie's house, and then that the Prophet woke up and so on. There's a bit more up until the Prophet arrived and started praying, and this is where Imam Saghaji is continuing from, because that's what's relevant. So he says that night ثم ذهبت فقمت إلى جنبه. When the Prophet was stood for prayer, I went and I stood beside him. فوضع يده على رأسي. The Prophet placed his hand over my on top of my head. وأخذ أذني اليمنى. And the Prophet took hold of my right ear. And the Prophet ﷺ, so he says, the Prophet placed his hand on my head, and he took a hold of my right ear, or that he took a hold of my ear and moved me to his right. So that would have been with the right ear anyway. So the Prophet ﷺ held me from my ear and moved me to his right. And then he says, فَصَلَّى رَكْعَتَيْنِ. The Prophet ﷺ prayed 2 units. ثُمَّ رَكْعَتَيْنِ. Then 2 units. ثُمَّ رَكْعَتَيْنِ. Then another 2 units. What it's telling us that the Prophet ﷺ prayed his Salatul Layl in multiples of 2. That's narrated by Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal in his Muslim. So that's one method, multiples of 2. Imam Saghaji is saying, أو أربع بتسليمة, or 4 units with 1 salam. So not multiples of 2, but now as a multiple of 4, saying salam at the end of 4 units. This is based upon a narration of Sayyidah Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu ta'ala anha. She says, ما كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يزيد في رمضان. This is that narration that is used to prove that Tarawih is 8 units. ما كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يزيد في رمضان ولا في غيره. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم did not used to pray in Ramadan or outside of Ramadan. That's the key here. In Ramadan or outside of Ramadan. The Prophet ﷺ did not used to exceed, go over 11 units. So either in Ramadan or out of Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ never prayed more than 11 units. Yusalli arba'an, he used to pray 4 units. فَلَا تَسْأَلْ عَنْ حُسْنِهِنَّ وَطُولِهِنَّ. Don't even ask about the beauty and the length of those 4 units. ثُمَّ يُصَلِّي arba'an, then he would pray another 4 units, and again, don't ask about the beauty and the length of those units. ثُمَّ يُصَلِّي ثَلَاثًا, then he would pray 3 units, which were the witr of Isha. If I had something to write with, I'll put it up on the board, but I'll explain to you. If you pay attention, inshallah, you will catch this clearly. Look at the wording of the hadith. She says, ما كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يزيد في رمضان ولا في غير رمضان. So neither in Ramadan or outside of Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ, Zada Yazidu means, Ziyada means increase. The Prophet ﷺ did not increase in Ramadan or outside of Ramadan. Ala ihda ashara rak'ah. He didn't increase on 11 units. Do you pray Tarawih outside of Ramadan?
No.
No. Number one clear, I wouldn't even say indication, clear evidence that this narration is not related to Tarawih, it's related to Salatul Layl. Number two, right, so the first thing, you don't pray Tarawih outside of Ramadan. Number two, if someone is habitually prays Tahajjud and he's regular Tahajjud, he prays Tahajjud regularly, do they stop praying Tahajjud during Ramadan? Right? So, saying that the Prophet never increased inside or outside of Ramadan, so what does that mean? That if those 8 units become Tarawih in Ramadan, that the Prophet did not used to pray Tahajjud in Ramadan? The third evidence, wherever you find this hadith, and this hadith is, the reference here is Sahih Muslim. And you can go and look, try and locate this hadith in Sahih Muslim. If someone reminds me, I will find you a more detailed reference. In other words, the exact chapter and hadith number for this hadith, so you can go and look it up. But this hadith in Sahih Muslim is actually, and in the books where this hadith is narrated, this hadith is narrated under the section Salatul Layl, which is Tahajjud prayer. And number 4, if anyone has any misconceptions that this Salatul Layl is actually is Tarawih, then understand that there are separate chapters in those same books. There's a chapter on Salatul Layl and the next chapter is Salatul Tarawih. Right? It's as simple as that. And in reality, that is pretty much the only evidence that they have. So, something useful for you to know. So that hadith narrated by Imam Muslim in his Sahih. Or there's also a narration of praying 6 units with 1 salam, as a set of 6 units, saying salam at the end of 6 units, based on a narration of Sayyidah Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu ta'ala anha again. Regarding the prayer of the Prophet at night, or Tahajjud prayer. And so she says, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on this occasion, or on towards later part of the Prophet's physical life, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would pray 6 units of Tahajjud and a unit of witr. Now this, in terms of witr, this goes against our opinion, the Hanafi opinion, but we've already discussed that in terms of, I believe we've discussed that in the chapter on witr, and the evidence is to show that witr is 3 units with 1 salam, not a single individual unit. And so, again, you have that narration as well. So first it was 2 multiples of 2, multiples of 4, and then just 1 set of 6 units together. Or you have a narration of 8 units with 1 salam as well. When we say 1 salam, what we're saying is that you're not doing salam anywhere in between. You're reading 2 without saying salam, you're standing up and continuing into the 3rd unit. And so 8 units with 1 salam, with salam at the end of 8 units. That's based on a narration. This narration of 6 units, this is from, it's narrated in Al-Fath al-Rabbani, and so is this of 8 units as well. Was this narration narrated by Sayyidah Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu ta'ala anha? She says that the Prophet ﷺ prayed 8 units with one salam. According to Imam Abu Hanifa, what is the what's the best method? What is afdal? So Imam Sawardi rahimahullah ta'ala, he tells us, وَالْأَفْضَلُ فِي تَطَوُّعِ اللَّيْلِ عِنْدَ أَبِي حَنِيفَةَ أَرْبَعٌ بِتَسْلِيمَةٍ. He says that according to Imam Abu Hanifa, the best method, the most virtuous or most rewarding afdal method is praying 4 units with one salam, doing it in praying in multiples of 4. Just like the nawafil of daytime, praying 4 units with one salam. Again, basing this on the hadith of Sayyida Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha. The Sahibain, Imam Muhammad and Imam Abu Yusuf, they say that Salatul Layl should be prayed in multiples of 2, and Salam at the end of each 2 units. And their opinion is based on Sayyidina Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu ta'ala. And so they were asked, what do you mean by multiples of 2? And he explained that you say salam after each 2 units, end the prayer after every 2 units. That is the view of Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, rahmahullah ta'ala as well. As a general rule for nafil, and especially for tahajjud, Imam Sawardi says, what طول القيام أفضل من كثرة السجود. And I'm sure we've covered this before, that it is more virtuous to elongate your, to have a longer recitation, longer ruku and sajda, than actually doing many sajdas. Many sajdas implies many raka'at. So for example, it would be better to read 2 units with a longer recitation in the same time, rather than reading 10 units with short recitation. Why? Allah says in the Quran, وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ, to stand for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with complete devotion. And another reason, when you're reading additional, let's say in the same time someone takes half an hour and reads 2 units, does a long recitation. Another person in that half an hour, he reads 10 units, and in each one is doing very short recitation. In total, the person who's done the recitation, he spent more of that time, more of that half an hour reciting the Quran. It may well be that out of the half an hour, he spent 20 minutes reciting the Quran, and the rest in ruku and sajda and tashahhud. Somebody who's reading 10 units, the majority of the time, you will find that's the exact opposite. It's possible that person spent 10 minutes reading the Quran, the rest of the time was spent in ruku and sajda and tashahhud. Now, although they are both in prayer, and it is rewarding, but one person, he is doing tasbih of Allah, he's saying Subhanallah, or Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, he's reading his at-tahiyyat, and another person, he's reciting the Quran. Obviously, the reward for reciting the Quran is far greater than any other, tasbihat and dhikr. So logically as well in that way that that person's reward can be expected to be greater because he's reciting the Quran. For every letter he's receiving so much more reward. That's a logical sort of reason behind that as well, why it would be preferred to make the recitation longer and in the same time rather than praying more number of units. In the same way, these are common misconceptions. Right, people have this thing about reading additional units and reading, generally speaking, I think a lot of people wouldn't consider that. They'd feel that they've accomplished more if they've read 100 units in one night than if they've read less number of units with more recitation of Quran. But in terms of the same thing applies with reciting the Quran as well. And you see this a lot in like gatherings of Quran Pani and reciting the Quran and so on. And people saying, oh, we've recited 10 Quran Majid and we recited 100 Quran Majid and so on. But how well have they been recited? It is better to actually recite one ruku. Number one, making sure that the recitation is correct, it's pronounced correctly, the tajweed is correct, and also, if possible, actually contemplating over the meaning and so on. To read one ruku would be better than reading a whole juz, but just hurrying through it, and perhaps making mistakes in the recitation as well, and never stopping to contemplate what you're actually reading. So from the perspective of reward, it's not, when you get these lists of so many Quran Majid, that's something that comes to mind that, are people actually aware of that?
Just my question was around the fact that people may want to do more regards. Could be, the length of how much have you committed to memory.
Yeah.
If you only know short surah.
It's obviously it goes hand in hand.
Yeah,
It depends on how much of the Quran you know, which is, again, it's an encouragement to memorize more of the Quran so that you can pray, make your units longer.
Could you recite the same surah multiple times?
In Nawafil you can. In optional prayers you can. And there are certain optional prayers where it's specified, like for example you read Surah Ikhlas 100 times or whatever. So you can read, repeat the same surah in Nawafil. Right, so that concludes this section on Salatul Layl, on Tahajjud, the method and what's best and what's afdal, and also that discussion on the number of units of Tarawih. Hopefully you'll find that useful as well. So the next chapter immediately after this is actually Tarawih. And possibly reason for mentioning Tahajjud before Tarawih. Obviously the first section was those nawafil, those optional prayers that are attached with the daily prayers. They get priority because they're attached with the daily prayers. Then after that, what you pray on a daily basis, inside and outside of Ramadan, and what you should try and make a habit of is Tahajjud. So that gets priority over Tarawih, which is prayed only in Ramadan. So possible logic behind the sequence of chapters. The next chapter is Tarawih, because Tarawih again is Sunnah Muakkad. That's why it takes priority over other types of nawafil. So, Imam Khawarji, first thing he tells us is that Summiyat Salatu Layali Ramadan bit Tarawih. That the prayer that is prayed in the nights of Ramadan is called Salatul Tarawih. It has a separate dedicated name. Why? What's the reason behind that? Why is it called Tarawih? Tarawih is plural of Tarwiha. And the original roots here in Arabic, istiraha means to take a rest. So the roots in Arabic go back to this meaning of resting. And the reason for this is because originally the way Taraweeh was prayed was that after every multiple of 2 or multiples of 4, people would pray and they would rest the length of time it had taken them to pray those units. So in between, they would rest the same amount of time it had taken them to pray those units.
Sorry, Ravi is the plural of
Tarweeha.
Tarkiha. That is rest.
So, Tarweeha actually means to give rest or to give comfort, to rest. And so traditionally that's what the traditional and true method of Taraweeh is. We live in hectic times where people want they want to get things done as quickly as possible, everything. Traditionally, the recitation would have been very slow and very careful recitation, and also, so for example, it might take you 15-20 minutes to pray 2 units, and then you pray after every 4 units, you take a break, same length of time. This is obviously a sign of changing times and heading towards the end of time, really. It is understandable in this country, and people who live in climates like this, in abnormal sort of timings during summer in particular, where the day is very, very long, night is very short, people are fasting for in excess of 20 hours, and remember, completing the Quran, one recitation of the whole Quran in Taraweeh in itself is Sunnah Muakkada, and the Jama'at of Taraweeh, we'll discuss what the ruling about that is later towards this chapter. But Taraweeh itself is Sunnah, and reciting the whole Quran in one Ramadan, in 1 month of Taraweeh is also Sunnah, or it's optional. And so it does bring up this discussion, this debate around whether, would it be better, because remember in the winter we have additional time as well. The nights are obviously that much longer. Would it be better to actually shorten the recitation in Taraweeh prayer and actually, rather than reciting quickly, recite fully? And recite properly and recite less. And I have seen various methods that have been deployed where, for example, people may recite only half of the Quran in Taraweeh and the other half they finish and listen to that recitation in the form of Shabina or just a collective recital, just to lighten that burden during Taraweeh with these timings in summer. And it is a genuine debate as to whether, but one thing that I personally am not inclined towards is the marketing of, and especially some ways that I've seen in the recent past of how the shorter Taraweehs have been marketed. That I'm not in favour of at all. And for example, if there is, and also the fact that those who wish to make the extra effort and exert themselves and listen to the entire Quran and they want to pray the longer Taraweeh, actually, I've seen discouragement of that I've seen people actually, discouraging that, or even mocking that, which I believe sincerely is very, very wrong and dangerous. Because Ramadan, again, it depends how you look at it. It's the month of Allah, it's once a year. If someone wants to make the most of it, and they want to go ahead and listen to the entire Quran and that recitation, then, alhamdulillah, allow them. But at the same time, with it being sunnah and so on, if someone wants to make provisions in a different manner, then again, that's something to be considered. But anyway, Sayyidina Abu Salama narrates from Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala that regarding Taraweeh, he says that the Prophet ﷺ would encourage people to pray Taraweeh without actually giving them a direct order, a direct command. So without directly commanding or ordering, he would encourage people to pray Taraweeh. So for example, the Prophet ﷺ would tell them about the reward of praying Taraweeh. So man qama Ramadan, whoever prays in the nights of Ramadan with belief and with a hope of being rewarded, Allah, all his previous sins are forgiven. غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ. All his previous sins are forgiven. So this is an encouragement, but it isn't a direct command. It isn't that you should or you must pray Taraweeh.